everyone, and welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. Oh, Kelsey, drinking the beverage. What beverage is that? That looks good. That looks very refreshing.
Whiskey. No, it's iced tea.
I was going to say, we're recording this pretty early, so I was going to say, that's this bold move. But hey, we're here podcasting. We figured, you know what, off-season, what are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? And we figured we've been talking so much Marvel that we wanted to take a little bit of a break from Marvel, but not really. We're going to still talk about Marvel in some capacity, in some facet, but we figured we'd look into some of the Avengers and see what other movies they've done, because as good as Marvel is, it's also a great outlet to also spur other careers and bring in actors with more independent careers and make them big stars, or vice versa. So as you see from the little icon on the bottom and the bio and the thumbnail of this video / podcast itself, we are talking about ScarJo this week, Scarlett Johansson, because Black Widow is so hot in the news right now. We figured we'd pay homage to our Black Widow and watch 3 of her movies, those movies being Lost in Translation, Jojo Rabbit, and Marriage Story. We went with her big breakout and then her 2 Oscar-nominated films. Keep it easy for you. And then we'll tease next week's movie club, because we're going to be doing this for like 3 weeks until What If is ready, because Kelsey's going on vacation, so we got a few things to pre-tape, all that stuff. Kelsey, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dill. How are you?
Good. I'm good. It's nice to just kind of not have to sit down and take notes for every little thing Marvel Easter egg wise and all that stuff. Or slave through a award show trying to figure out which performances are better than others when they're all so good.
Right.
But yeah, so before we get into this, though, do you have any news for the week? Of course, we always bring Marvel news to the table.
So I don't have news per se, but I did watch the assembled episode on the making of Loki. So nice. I just thought I'd talk about some things that
very cool.
Things that I found super interesting. I always love these assembled. I love how they're doing this, because I just watching behind the scenes and watching bloopers is just one of my favorite pastimes. Just across the board, TV shows, movies, everything. I think it's just because I so badly want to be a part of the industry one day that I'm just so entranced by it all. So just some things that I thought were interesting. They built a lot of the sets themselves, how when I was talking about how much I enjoyed the Lamentus set, you were like, oh, it's probably all green screen. They built the majority of that set. I mean, there still were blue and green screens up in the distance and
for the sky and
exactly,
color
but
correction,
for the most part, everything was super tangible in there, and they were all the set designers and crew were talking about how important it was for them to really just live in the world of the TVA and all that great stuff. And another thing that I thought was interesting was when Tom Hiddleston was talking about going into making Infinity War, he was basically told right off the bat by the Russo brothers, hey, the opening scene of this movie is going to be you handing the Tesseract to Thanos, and basically Thanos executes Loki. And Tom Hiddleston just looked at Kevin Feige and said, so is this it? And Kevin Feige was like, yeah. And it's oh my God, that's such a conversation that these actors have to go through. Is this the one that's going to take me out? Is this the movie? And it's just yeah, it is. Your time has come. It reminds me so much of the Paul Bettany story about, getting pulled in to ask about a WandaVision, and he totally thought that he was getting fired, and they were like, no, we're pitching you a TV show. So what a turnaround for Tom Hiddleston to get his very own TV series, and the fact that we're getting season 2, it's just all exciting stuff.
Cool.
I also love the bromance between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. I think a lot of people, freak out over Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Holland, but I think Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston is now the favorite Marvel bromance. Nice.
Well, because also on screen they're bromance as well. It's not like Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Holland where Jake is trying to kill him,
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So I guess I have 2 bits of news actually.
Alrighty.
The one is that the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, James Gunn has confirmed it will be less than 40 minutes long. So it is going to be more of a traditional TV special like you see with the Charlie Browns and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where it's a very short little movie, and it will apparently explain and set up some information that we'll need for the third Guardians movie, and it is actually being set on the same exact sets they used for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So, I think budget-wise and monetary-wise, it's nice that they got to film on the same sets, so it looks like it'll transition right into Guardians 3. So, again, Kevin Feige being smart and saying, hey, you're going to need to watch this special in order to understand what's going to happen in Guardians 3. It's a good marketing move because now people are going to watch the special because they want to know, especially with the big Gamora mystery up in the air. And second, Hawkeye, literally like a half hour ago from when we were recording this, got a confirmed release date, and that is November 24th. So get ready to fill your bellies with some stuffing and turkey and get ready to sit down and watch Hawkeye on the 24th. I don't know if Thanksgiving's on the 24th, but it's around then for sure. Let me just double check that. It's on the 25th, so it's the day before Thanksgiving. So watch Hawkeye, stay up all night, watch Hawkeye Wednesday at midnight or at 3 a.m. if you're East Coast like us, and then slug your way to Thanksgiving dinner the next day. It'll be great.
Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday. Can
right,
I just
and
say
now
that?
Over the years, I've toyed around. I've juggled the Christmas, Halloween, Thanksgiving thing because I'm like, the food on Thanksgiving takes precedence. The actual like spirit and like familyness of Christmas and the nostalgia has always been around. But then also the movie watching for Halloween is great. It's horror movies and you get to be all creepy and scary. Right. But I think over the past few years, it's Thanksgiving's been the one that's kind of pulled through a little bit, like the horse that was in third place, and now it's kind of reaching the finish line above the rest. It's the Lightning McQueen.
It's always I've always been loyal to Thanksgiving.
I love it, yeah, because then also you kind of celebrate it the next few days too, because you kind of have leftovers.
The leftovers. Ooh.
Yeah. Kelsey, we did a Friendsgiving, I remember, in like I think it was either early college or high school. That was a good time.
I think it was like freshman year of college.
Right, we were all coming back home, and some people who were still in high school. Okay, that was a good time. Thanks, Friendsgiving. It's like 2 holidays in one. That's kind of why I like Christmas too, because it's like 3 or 4 holidays in one. Because you celebrate Christmas in like 5 different days or whatever. So, because you have to see your family this day, and then you see your friends this day, and then there's Christmas Eve, and then there's Christmas, and then there's the day after Christmas where you're still opening gifts from other family members who are sending you things and all that stuff. So we're a big fan of holidays here.
Anyway, what's your other bit of news, Jill?
That was the Hawkeye release date.
Oh, right. Guardians and
Christmas,
Hawkeye.
we made it full circle back to Christmas, which is pretty impressive, honestly. So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know what the release date for that is.
I was going to say
2022. That would be my guess.
2022 for the Christmas
Guardians
special?
3 is not coming out till at least 2023. So I figured, because if it was coming out this December, I feel like that'd be a little soon. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's going to come out around Christmas.
I feel like we'd know by now if it was coming out this December. I can't
sure.
believe we still haven't gotten a Spider-Man trailer.
I know. Maybe it got lost in translation, Kels. Was that a good segue?
I see what you did there, you sneaky sneak.
I just don't want to talk about the Spider-Man trailer because I don't want to get the hopes up and all that. Like I know you're the one who's usually saying stop talking about Spider-Man.
I don't want to theorize. I'm just saying the fact that we haven't gotten even like a teaser trailer. The last thing that we got was that the video of them talking about like
what the name
of the movie's gonna be.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Lost in Translation. Let's talk about these movies. So we're going to go in chronological order when they were released. It's the easiest way to do it. Lost in Translation, 2003. Sofia Coppola. Not her first movie, but probably the movie that got her the most attention as this is going to be like a legit filmmaker. Obviously the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola, who directed The Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now, like literally some of the best films of all time, who's still making great movies now. So she's one of our great female directors out there, women directors. Kelsey, let's talk about Lost in Translation.
I wrote a synopsis. Do you want to hear it?
I figured you did. That's why I set the stage of who directed it. And now I'm going to let you take it away with the actual synopsis of the plot events, because that's what most people want to hear about.
All right. It's very short. Well-known actor Bob Harris travels to Japan to promote a whiskey where he forms a connection with a young woman.
Mm-hmm. So this was actually my first time watching it in its entirety, which is kind of crazy because I feel like every independent film nerd buff, pretentious douchebag likes Lost in Translation and is like, oh, you've never seen Lost in Translation, but I've never seen it. So it's it was interesting to watch it for the first time. I've seen scenes of it, but It was a very interesting film. I'm excited to talk about it. But Kelsey, I want to get your thoughts first. What did you think of it? And we'll also talk about mostly Scarlett's performance, but we can talk about other things as well.
Dill, I just don't love movies that try too hard to be like an aesthetic rather
Mm-hmm.
than like tell a story.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I feel like movie buffs and like people who really enjoy, like, I don't know, pay attention to things like the cinematography, for example, like eat this stuff up where it's like this
Mm-hmm.
shot of her just like gazing out of like to the like the skyline. And she's just sitting there and like I literally wrote down I was like, we open up a shot of an ass who I can only assume is Scarlett's.
Yeah.
And I was correct, because then like scenes later she's just like prancing around in like the same underwear, like shirt, t-shirt, get up. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just like it was just so like slow paced. I'm just gonna go
Mm-hmm.
out and say I just like did not like this film.
That's fine, yeah, and that's the thing with movies, especially movies that are this old too. I mean, it's 2003, so it's not that
Hmm.
old, but it's at least like
Yeah.
pushing on 20 years old. So like, there's a dated nature, and we'll talk a little bit about the actual comedy and the use of the Japanese culture to kind of reflect some of that comedy. But
Hmm.
I do think it's interesting because it does feel like this age of filmmaking where it was very much aesthetic forward, and you also get a lot of like meandering, like it's a lot of just them being in Tokyo and navigating their way through Tokyo with each other or sometimes separately. And there's something very profound and beautiful about that if you look at it a certain angle. But if you're looking for just like this rich story, it doesn't follow the typical like two characters meet and then they fall in love and there's some drama and then they like break up or they get together at the end. Like, it's not like that. It's not
Hmm.
That's not what it is, and that's not what people are going to get out of it if that's what they're expecting. But I see what you mean. Like, it is slower and it does meander. It's like a slice of life film, but even more ambiguous because it's two different slices of life, and they're really rarely together. They are together a lot, but it takes a while for them to actually get together. It's a
Yeah.
lot of just them in their own separate worlds. Um, but I do think it's a very interesting metaphor for like loneliness and like sort of depression and trying to find oneself, because these are obviously two characters that feel lost in their very own lives, and then you put them in a place where they are totally foreign and have no idea how to navigate even the language, like the language barrier. And yeah, it sets up for some funny comedy, but it's also sad in those moments because you realize how out of touch they are with their surroundings, and then paired with the fact that they're very lonely as individuals as is. That was very profound to me, and that like spoke to me a lot, like the sense of loneliness and the sense of like trying to find your way but also not knowing how to navigate the place you're at, both mentally and physically,
Hmm.
which was very interesting to me. What do you think
Yeah.
of Scarlett herself?
I mean, I wrote down, I said, fun fact, Scarlett was 19 when she made this movie, and she
Mm-hmm.
looks like she's 16.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you can just tell like how young she is in like the way that she talks, like you can
Right.
hear it in her voice. Like, she hasn't like super like matured yet. Like, she hasn't really dropped into her voice. Like, we hear how she talks in like the later movies, and especially like as Natasha, like I feel like she really drops into her um deeper range there. And
Mm-hmm.
she's just so young, and it's not that she does like a bad job. It just feels like, I don't know, like she just wasn't. This is the biggest problem that I have with this movie. It's that I feel like I didn't really connect with either of the characters to care
Okay.
about
Yeah.
them enough to like want to watch their story. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
like he's like a big shot like actor, like, kind of washed up a little bit because he's at the point where he's just like promoting stuff, when he like says at some point in the movie, he's like, instead of like being in a play or like doing the thing that I love, like I'm here like getting paid $2 million to promote this whiskey.
Right.
Like, that's the whole, like that's his whole shtick. And like the only thing that you really get from her character is that she's kind of stuck in this like marriage that she's not, like, we don't really understand why she's with, who she's with. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure that actor is Phoebe's brother from Friends.
Yes, it is Giovanni Ribisi, who is
Yeah.
also in Ted. He's the guy who dances in front of the TV. Have you ever seen Ted?
No.
All right, that's gonna be on the list for a future
Oh,
movie club if we
okay.
can find some way to connect it to Marvel, which we haven't. But
Is Paul
um,
Rudd in that movie? No, it's
in
not Paul
Ted,
Rudd.
no, it's
It's
Mark Wahlberg.
Mark
That's why it's tough
Wahlberg.
because I don't think there are any Marvel actors in it. But eventually, someday we'll
Maybe.
just watch it, the two of us, because that's a fun
It'll
movie.
be our news for the week. We'll just touch on it
Right,
briefly
we
and then move
watched
on to the
Ted.
next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Giovanni Ribisi, and then the friend who is also performing at the hotel is Anna Faris, who another
Yes.
Marvel connection, was married to Chris Pratt. So
Right. And honestly, like Anna Faris, like she was honestly the standout for me in this
okay,
movie.
yeah,
I think she really like brought out like a style of comedy that's kind of
hmm
universal. You know,
right,
I think she's really good at doing that with like across the board in all of her movies. Where I feel like, you know, because it's so outdated, it is 2003. Like I just feel like that style of comedy is also outdated. You know,
hmm
we're making kind of fun of a culture and poking
yeah,
fun at a way of life. It's just like
hmm
we don't find that funny anymore. We don't do that
right.
anymore for
I mean,
good
let's talk
reason.
about that because at first, like, the thing with Bill Murray is that he has such a dry, sarcastic wit to him, and it's really enjoyable. And I didn't think this was a comedy at all. So when he was making jokes, I was laughing. Like when he's taking the photo shoot and he's like, "Yeah, James Bond, yeah, okay." Like he's like this banter. It's funny, but you also think like it doesn't do the best job of like representing the Japanese culture. They make it like the language barrier. They almost poke fun at it. And Sofia Coppola has talked about it, how like this was a love letter to Tokyo because she does love Tokyo. And she says
Okay.
when you're doing something so realistic, you're gonna have people that do kind of like laugh at it, but also then embrace it. And we see when they are out on the town, the two of them, there is a lot of that like whimsy and that nightlife, and it's kind of celebrating that.
Sure.
And so she said she wanted to kind of like toe the line because in our own culture we make fun of ourselves, but I
Mhm.
think nowadays, yeah, it is a little touchier of a subject. Just because it is a little dated, the humor, especially with the lady who comes in to give him a
The
massage and like,
stocking.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, like lip my stocking or something. Yeah, it's not it's some of the humor's dated.
Yeah,
But I think
for
Bill
sure.
Murray is charming enough that he almost sells it because he's not a very likable character. I mean, he's a guy who's
Mm-mm.
like miserable with his marriage, treats his wife like shit, but also comes into this new place, is very pessimistic. He's getting paid $2 million to do this whiskey commercial, but to him, it's like and I get where he's coming from as an artist. He wants to be doing like his real art that he loves, but at the same time, you're getting paid $2 million. Like, I'd do a whiskey commercial for $2 million and get a free
Sure.
stay in Tokyo. Like, please,
Yeah.
sign me up yesterday. But like, but he is just so charismatic, and I think we're used to seeing him as like the guy from SNL and like Ghostbusters and Groundhog Day and Caddyshack, like all these movies where he's like this bumbling doofus. But now
Mhm.
seeing him as kind of like this dramatic role, but also kind of having that dry wit and humor. I mean, this is probably my favorite performance of his for sure. Because like even though the character isn't as likable, like he brings so much to the role. He really puts you in that sense of loneliness that I think Scarlett does a good job as well. But like he's a much more seasoned actor, so like he kind of gets it more than she does. But that's not to
Sure.
knock her. It's just you're right. Like she's coming into her own here, and you can definitely see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely like the beginning stages of her career
hmm
and like
Um.
finding herself.
So, what did you think of the actual romance itself? Because I think that has been a point of contention for some people because
Yeah.
some people think it's a little weird, the age gap, but like I want to know what you think.
Well, if my note that says here, no, don't kiss, gross. That tells you, I think, everything that you need to know about
Yeah.
how I felt about these two characters. I mean, for a
hmm
while, it just felt like very friendly, maybe
hmm
because I just like didn't I'm not going to say they didn't have any chemistry because I think that they had chemistry, whether
Yeah.
or not like it was romantic chemistry. That's questionable because I kind
hmm
of would have just preferred it to be like this like friendship almost. And
Right.
I think that's mainly because of the huge age gap.
Right.
Like I said, she was 19 when the movie came out, so at the time of filming she was
She's probably
probably
17,
18
18. Yeah.
or
hmm
yeah, 17, 18, and then he's like well into his 50s at the time of
Yeah. I think early
filming,
50s he was. I
you
think he was like
know?
53 when it came out. So,
So yeah, that
so like
didn't
Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriend now.
yeah, gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, I know. And also Bill Murray isn't like Leonardo DiCaprio. Like he looks 50 in this movie. It's not like Leonardo DiCaprio
He
who's like 50 but looks like 30 something.
I thought that he was older based off of how he
Mhm.
looked in this movie. Like I thought that he
Mhm.
was, like well into his 60s and then I
Yeah,
googled his age because I needed to know. So
right. Yeah,
sorry, Bill Murray.
it's a little awkward, but I think also like when those kisses do come because we see the first two in the elevator and then like the last one is like a real kiss, but even the two in the elevator seem a little awkward. Like is this romantic or is this just like our like bond that we're solidifying with a kiss because it's just the closest two humans can be. Because that's the thing, like Patrick Stewart has always said that whenever he greets someone that he has met, not a stranger, but whenever he greets an old friend, he will kiss them on the mouth. Just like because sometimes people kiss on the cheeks, but he'll just like give a nice peck on the mouth because he says that's the closest two humans can ever be. And it's a little weird, but again, in some cultures and maybe like back then, maybe it wasn't like so much of a romantic thing as more just like a friendly gesture. I do think this movie is like more romantic than like friendly, but
sure.
I agree. It's a little uncomfortable. It's a little weird to see, especially that last kiss at the very end. But I do see how like these two people who are just so lonely, they finally found someone that like can share that loneliness with them, and they find some sort of bond with. Like I get it. I get what it's trying to say. And I think that's the point. Like I think it's trying to be a little awkward because they are so alienated. They are so disconnected from the world that like they don't know how to navigate. They don't know how to approach this romance. And I do like how like when they're on the bed together, you know, a lesser filmmaker or, you know, a male filmmaker even may have had them like have a sex scene there, but no, instead you just have him like kind of like touch her foot, and that's as much as you get. And honestly, it works better there because they are so awkward and they are kind of in their own worlds, and like I don't think that's what the movie is about, is like the sexual nature. It's more about like what you said, the friendship, the kinship, the fact that they found someone that they can share their loneliness with and actually understands their loneliness, which I did appreciate. I like how Sofia Coppola didn't go for that, didn't go for the creepy, you know, like sex stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's a very aesthetic, meandering film. Like it's not for everyone, and I totally get that. And it's not. I didn't watch it and go, "Oh my god, that's like a 5-star film." Like I didn't, because it's been so much time too that, you know, I think I can point out the stuff that is very dated. But I mean, Bill Murray's just so good, and I am a fan of Sofia Coppola's direction. I do like how she does tap into that human nature and soul. What are your thoughts on that last whisper? Because that's like kind of the whisper heard around the world when that came out. That was the big talk. Like, what do you think of the whisper?
What did he say? We don't know.
That's the whole thing. We never know. And she said that she never wrote anything in the script. That was only Bill and Scarlett's moment. And she said no one to this day knows, because Scarlett and Bill have never told anyone what he whispered to her on set.
Oh my god. Do you think they're ever going to reveal it?
Who knows? I don't know.
Bill Murray on his deathbed. I told her that her breath smelled. Like it's something like.
That's the funny thing. People have theorized for years and years. Like, what did he say? Did he tell her like a joke because it's Bill Murray? Did he say something to Scarlett? Did he say something to Charlotte as Bob? Or is it something that like he just, you know, made up on the spot? Like, and there's no telling, because she like purposely turned the microphones off, turned the sound off for that moment. And then like when he said, okay, it was loud enough that it picked up in her mic. So they like turned his mic off completely, which I think is very interesting, because it's like, it makes you think like, what did he say? It's like just common mystery. I have no idea.
I don't know.
Yeah. So it seems like you're kind of over the talk of Lost in Translation.
Well, listen, Dill, here's what I did with all these movies. I kind of went into them with the mindset of like, if someone who's a huge Marvel fan wanted to, you know, watch some of their other works, how strongly I would recommend each film to them. And so what I did was I made this thing called the ScarJo scale, which is really just a, you know, out of 10 scale as to whether or not I thought that this movie was like a good representation of like her work. If you really enjoy her in the Marvel movies, oh, then you'd love her in this kind of thing. So I gave this movie a 4 out of 10.
Okay.
Just because like, I'm just so disappointed in the fact that like our main character, Bill Murray, was not a likable guy, and that the likable character, Scarlett Johansson's character, Charlotte, was kind of like neglected a little bit. Like I wanted to know more about her. Like we got
it's more about him than her.
Yeah. Like my favorite scene was honestly when we first met Anna Faris's character, Kelly, and she's going on and on about like what she's doing and how she's like this big time actress, and oh my god, you're my favorite photographer. I always want you to shoot me. And she says something like, oh, I'm staying under a pseudonym. Like, if you want to come, like, this is my room or whatever. And Charlotte's like, that name that she's using is like a guy's name. And like her husband's just like, why do you always have to do that? Like, just because like you went to Yale, like you don't have to correct everyone. I'm like, if she went to Yale, she's a smart ass woman. Like, I want to see more of this, you know, like I don't think someone as smart and as quick as her character is like led to be would be with this like ass hat that
Right.
she's with. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't think it's Scarlett's fault that I didn't like this movie. Like I don't fault her at all. I really just fault how her character kind of just like I feel like just fell flat on the page, and therefore, Scarlett couldn't do much on the screen.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how like 2 of the 3 of the movies we picked, she is kind of the supporting character. She's not the lead. Like this one's Bill Murray. The next one, it's obviously more about the kid. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because she's not the lead. But again, like she is the female lead, and you'd want her to have a little bit more to do, a little bit more agency in her role.
I did write down the accolades as well.
Yeah, please.
Whether or not they pertain to Scarlett. So she it won at the Oscars Best Original Screenplay. I think only Bill Murray was nominated for Best Actor, but she was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Comedy for this role.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I knew that it was supposed to be funny, because the Golden Globes pegged it as in the comedy category. So
see, I never knew it was a comedy either. I thought because people have said like, oh, it's Bill Murray doing drama. I think because for Bill Murray, it's more of a drama.
More like a dramedy. Probably.
Right. It kind of is more of a comedy, but because Bill Murray is such like a goofy, like slapstick comedian, this feels more like a drama for him, at least. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Any last words on Lost in Translation, or should we move on to Germany?
We're moving on to Jojo Rabbit.
That is right. Directed by a Marvel director, Taika Waititi.
Marvel powerhouse.
Right. We've talked about like how there are some crossovers in these. Like we're gonna go more for like the movies that showcase one actor in particular more. Like this was more of a Scarlett movie than it was like a Sam Rockwell movie. But we're gonna acknowledge that Sam Rockwell was in Iron Man 2. And were there any others? Like Taika was in Thor Ragnarok, and he directed
Sam Rockwell.
Any more else in this one?
I don't think Rebel Wilson's been in a Marvel movie yet.
No, yet.
But she's in there. I'm trying to like think about anyone else that I recognize. Caliban is in this movie.
Yes, from the X-Men
from
series.
Logan.
Yes. Stephen Merchant, who is just so good. I mean, we'll get there, but like he's so good at every little thing he does because he's never. Logan is probably his biggest role I've seen him in. Every other movie he's in, like Fighting with My Family with Florence Pugh, which when we get to a Florence Pugh movie club, we will watch because it's phenomenal. But he's in that. He's in Jojo Rabbit. He's in the movie Good Boys, and he just pops up in little one scene. He's a one scene wonder. He comes in, he steals the show, and he leaves. Like I love Stephen Merchant. Anyway, tell us about Jojo Rabbit, 2019, directed by Taika Waititi.
Okay, during World War II, 10-year-old Jojo is determined to prove his loyalty to his country, Germany. But when he discovers his mother has been hiding a Jewish girl in their house, his perspective begins to change.
And had you seen this one before or no?
No, I hadn't. I had always wanted to get around to it just because, like, I love Taika. I knew Scarlett was nominated for it, so she had to be, good in it. But this is my first time watching it.
So, Kels, give me your first thoughts on Jojo Rabbit.
I mean, it was just so delightful in every way, I think. Like, it's just Taika's brain, Like, I just want to, it's a little window into, like, how he thinks and everything. And, like, I was honestly watching it, and I was just like, you know what? Like, I think it's about time we can start making these kind of jokes about World War II. Like, how people are like, you make a joke about something and people are like, ooh, too soon. It's like, no, I think this is like right around the time because it really walks its line.
If you pitch the idea of this movie, like, hey, we're going to make a movie about a Hitler youth who loves Hitler. Hitler's his imaginary best friend. And he like lives his day with Hitler. And then there's a girl hiding in his place. And like anyone else probably would have made the most offensive, most tone-deaf movie ever. But for some reason, because it's Taika and because he's also playing Hitler and he's making Hitler look like a bumbling idiot, I almost wish you went further with it. Like, I think it works. I think it does work. And also you get a lot of good drama. Like, it's a good Holocaust drama as well. It's not just comedy. And
I
a lot of that is due to Scarlett.
With the pitch you just gave, Dill, I don't even think anyone would dare to try to make it a comedy. I think they would, like any other director, screenwriter, would go full, like, forced drama, and it would just be, like, this depressing piece, you know? But the fact Hitler that it's, youth, like...
like, if you make a movie about, like, a Hitler Hitler Youth coming to his senses and like bonding with this German girl and then realizing that what he's doing is wrong. Like that's a little weird, because then you're trying to make someone sympathize with or empathize with a Hitler Youth, but because you do it this way and you make it clear from the beginning that he's this brainwashed kid who doesn't know better, because he is, like he doesn't know better, but at the same time, like you make it very clear that the Hitler that he's idolizing is like this total bumbling farce idiot, and it works because of that. Drama would have been just like so tone deaf and so weird. But it's nice
just
that you
would not have been a fun watch, but
right,
this was very fun to watch.
Right, because then you can still have dramatic elements, but now at least the comedic elements and the actual core, it still keeps it up and keeps it away from being a very tone deaf version of the story. So let's talk about Scarlett herself. Like, what did you think of that relationship and her performance?
So I wrote down, like, even though like she has less to do, I definitely in this movie out of the three that we picked, her performance is just so much more impactful and so much more memorable. I feel like I definitely think that out of all the Scarlett movies I've seen, which have been these three and the Marvel movies, and probably something else at some other time, I think this has been my favorite performance of hers, like, ever. Just because you can tell that she just had so much fun with this role. And I think that that's definitely something that Taika must, like, encourage his actors to do on his sets, because every movie that I've seen of his, it's just like everyone's just playing, and it's like no one's afraid to like hold back or anything. And
it feels very against type for her too. Like, it doesn't feel like, she's usually honestly kind of the sex symbol in a lot of movies, like especially male directed movies. And even in Lost in Translation, she's this young, naive girl, but here she's a mother, and not in Marriage Story where she's a mother whose like life is falling apart, but she's a mother who has to be like strong for her kid and like really, set an example, but also who's dealing with other stuff in her life. It's not just about the kid. There's all these other layers that she knows that the audience slowly, gets on the same page with. And I think that's really interesting too, seeing her play such a different role.
And it's just like such a three-dimensional character, because like in the beginning, like you see her like, he's like, she's talking with Sam Rockwell's character and it's like, oh, so like you're the reason why my son has a deformity now and has a limp, because, whatever he was doing at this training camp that I'm sending him to, because like, I'm a supporter, same as everyone else. And then to just like figure out like just along the way that she's actually, like not a Nazi, and that she's, is harboring a Jewish girl in her house and all this stuff. It was just like such a dynamic character. And I loved that, because you don't see a lot of like multifaceted characters for women. You know what I'm saying?
And I think the thing with movies in general, like, it's very clear if it's a movie about like, if there's like a rich, meaty performance in the movie, like in Lost in Translation, that's Bill Murray. In Marriage Story, it's kind of Adam Driver. Here, there's really not that. So then the supporting character, like, this is the meatier performance, because this is probably the most dramatic storyline in the movie, is his mom and eventually what happens to her. But I think in Marriage Story and Lost in Translation, those actors outshine her because they are such like, the directors and the screenwriters really hone in on them more than everyone else. Here, it's like, I feel like every person in the ensemble gets attention, so you do feel like I agree with you. Like, this role, even though it's the smallest of the three, it makes her shine maybe the most, because it does allow, because Taika really allowed for each character to kind of speak on their own. Because there are so many good supporting characters. Like you said, even Rebel Wilson, small part, but she steals scenes, when she says, like, here, put this on, run in there,
Yeah. She's like, you've been promoted. Here, you see that American? Go give him a hug. I was like, oh my God. It's
awful. And then Sam Rockwell is a really interesting character in this as well.
Yep.
He has multiple layers. Jim Taika himself is funny, but then you also have the kids. The kids are great. Thomasin McKenzie, who is becoming a huge star. She's in a movie now in theaters, Old, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. She's going to be in Last Night in Soho. Like, she is a breakout star, and she's amazing in this too, as the little girl. And Roman Griffin, what's his last name? Davis? Roman Griffin Davis, I think.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
Is the kid in this, and he's great too. And then Archie Yates is adorable as well. He's my favorite character. Yes, Archie Yates.
I love Yorkie. Oh my God, when he lived, I was like, yes, Yorkie's alive.
Yeah, because go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, like, I just couldn't take it if like Yorkie and Scarlett Johansson's character died.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is like you said, they couldn't make a drama. They had to make a comedy with drama in it. And I think if you make all these deaths, it then becomes too much like your normal Holocaust drama, and they didn't want that. I think they wanted to still make it a comedy and like give that one moment with Scarlett as the big tear-jerking moment. Like make one moment, because then that really resonates. If like Yorkie died and then like the girl got caught and died and then Sam Rockwell died, like that would be a lot. And I think that would make it too heavy and then kind of like make it feel a little tonally inconsistent. But I think because you have only one story that really gets there with Scarlett, I think it's more effective because that's where you can really hone in on the drama and really, because it's enough to give Jojo a purpose to feel different. Like it's enough to change Jojo. You don't need Yorkie to die or all these other characters to die, you know? Which I liked. You know, Yorkie's just the best. I love him.
So good. When they see each other and they hug and he's like in that like metal like outfit. It's just like, oh, Jojo. Yeah. So cute.
Yeah, it's just so cute. Yes, cute is a very good word. And if you had told me a movie about Hitler, I'd call cute. I'd be like, what are you talking about? What? But it works. It really works. And I know friends who love it even more than me, and I love it a lot. So I'm glad it got such recognition because Taika was known for Ragnarok, but a lot of his other indie works, you know, no one really talked about them. Like What We Do in the Shadows, it's now gotten a cult following, but no one really talked about it at first. Hunt for the Wilder People didn't get a lot of talk. Boy didn't get a lot of talk. So the fact that Jojo Rabbit then became this sensation, it won an Oscar for Taika's writing. Like, I think that's huge.
Yeah, so it was at the Oscars. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and it won for Best Adapted Screenplay. My A almost looked like an O, and I almost said adopted screenplay.
Adopted screenplay. That's funny.
And I will say that the first thing that I heard, because I think the first person you hear speak other than Jojo is Taika as Hitler, and you can just tell that Taika and Rebel both being from New Zealand. I think Rebel's from New Zealand. She's either from New Zealand or Australia. You can tell they're both kind of struggling with the German accent throughout the film. Like you can kind of hear their New Zealand or / Australian slipping in throughout it. But I think Scarlett did a great job with the German accent, and it's really hard. It's a hard accent. I was like trying to like mimic what they were saying throughout the film. Kelsey, right now. It was like I can only say like rabbit. Like it's like rabbit. I have to like hear it. I
That's
can't
more
just,
Russian.
Like,
I keep going Russian when I do it.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah. So it's just a masterclass in so many different things, from farce and satire to then like performances, to just really well structured movie in itself. Like it moves really well. It's well paced. Again, that Stephen Merchant scene is so good where he comes in and they heil everyone in the room. Like
the high Hitler moment. It's so funny. Yeah, they just like they have to go through everyone. And then they're reading like the book, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is great! You've really made my day. Thank you so much." Like, who is this Nathan?
Right. It's just so good. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it, and like again, like it's up against a lot of good competition in 2019. Like you have Parasite, and then you have another movie which we're about to talk about, and then The Irishman, which is like one of Scorsese's best, and like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is one of Tarantino's best. Like you have so many good movies coming out in 2019 that like. That was a monster of a year for movies.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that Jojo got in there, because I really do think if it came out like 10 years prior, it might have gotten brushed aside. I really do. But I think it came out at the right time, right when the Taika hype was really getting there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Any last words?
On my ScarJo scale, I gave this an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Because it was just it's so good. And I would also like to shout out the costume design, which I think was also nominated at the Oscars.
I believe so, yeah.
The costumes were so good as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliantly designed as well. And all the shots. I mean, the shot of her feet at the pool, her shoes at the pool, and then later that becomes the thing you see when she's hanging.
I noticed the motif of like just the shot of all like her feet, and then like him also in frame,
and it shows like the child's perspective as well.
Yeah, he was chasing that butterfly, and I was like, oh my God, he's like getting close to the like hanging stand. I'm like, he's about to look up and see her feet, isn't he? And then he looked up and saw her feet, and then he tried to tie her laces, but he didn't know how because she hadn't taught him yet. And I was like,
I'm like
I literally
blowing
wrote
up
down
right
in
now.
my notes, I was like, what is this? I'm sad now. Like, I was
Yeah,
having
right.
such a great time laughing at Hitler, and now I'm sad.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. It's like a comedy, but he finds those moments. And he doesn't overindulge in the dramatic moments either. So when that moment happens, it really hits and it really resonates. Um, yeah, just a beautiful movie.
Yeah, really.
And now in 2019, it happened to be up against for Best Picture Marriage Story,
Yep.
which it was also a Scarlett Johansson movie, which she was also nominated for. So it took like how many years of like 20 plus years of her career, and then she finally got her Oscar nomination, and then she gets another one in the same year. So it was like,
Yeah.
here, you haven't had any, here's two, which
Oh
is
my
very
God.
unprecedented.
That's
So let's talk about
overwhelming.
Marriage Story, directed by Noah Baumbach, 2019. Kelsey, give us your little synopsis.
As their marriage comes to an end, Charlie and Nicole face the trials and tribulations of getting a divorce.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very clear cut. I mean, some people are like, why isn't it called Divorce Story? But I have theories as to why it might be called Marriage Story. But we'll get there in
Divorce Story just isn't like that cute of a name, I feel.
It's just yeah, well, that's a very sad.
I feel like Marriage Story like flows better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
anyway.
there is a lot of. I mean, this isn't my theory, but there's a lot of moments where you're reminded of what they did have, and even though it is about the divorce, it's also navigating the past and seeing what didn't work out well, because like overall, divorce is a result of marriage also, and you have to acknowledge the marriage to the divorce also. But anyway, Kelsey, what are your thoughts on Marriage Story?
So this was my second watch through of Marriage Story. The other two I'd seen. It was my first time, so that was fun. The first time I watched Marriage Story, I was like it was kind of depressing. It was like a little heavy, and I was getting sad.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot of
I
heavy.
remember like taking a break like halfway through the movie to just be like, I think I need a moment or like a day or something, and then I'll like finish. I'll see how the rest of this goes. But the second time I watched it, I feel like I just appreciated it more. Like it really is a well-written, like beautifully shot movie that is just like so full of realism. Like it's just so real, and like it also has its moments of comedy. Like my favorite, like some of my favorite moments is when she's with her family, like her sister and her mother. Like they just bring out like such like comedy in those moments, and even Adam Driver himself is like comedy, and Laura Dern is fantastic in this movie. Like it's just like a even though it's a sad story, it really is like a powerhouse of a film, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, also it's good because it gives each side of the story their pros and their cons. It's very clear you do not need to root for a specific person over the other. Like it's very evenly balanced, which I do like. A lot of the times in movies like this, like Kramer versus Kramer, or even like sports films, like it's very clear who they want you to kind of root for.
Yeah.
But here it's very unclear because Adam Driver makes mistakes. Scarlett Johansson makes mistakes. Scarlett Johansson's a great mom. Adam Driver's a great dad at times. Sometimes they're not. Like, it's really interesting. And I think that alone really helps. And because people they're with, the lawyers, are both kind of awful. Not Alan Arkin, not the old guy, but like Ray Liotta's character. Laura Dern, they are toxic people as well. Have you ever seen Big Little Lies?
No, I haven't.
Laura Dern, like, it reminded me a little bit of her character from Big Little Lies, but I think Big Little Lies, she does it even to a greater max. But like, this really like rich, privileged bitch, and it's like so good. It's so good. But like, you get flavors of that here too. I think because the surrounding characters add so much, you really start to understand the two of them more. And the kid as well. I mean, I think he's the weak link of the ensemble, just as an acting perspective, only because he's a young kid. And, he's not supposed to be the standout, but I do think everyone around him in the ensemble is just so strong.
My issue with this film, Jill, is that I just feel like it is so jam-packed of great performances that I'm almost afraid that Scarlett almost gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. You know, like Adam, I feel like a lot of people talked about Adam Driver being the standout. I mean, like case in point, Laura Dern won for Best Supporting Actress for this film. Like, I just feel like there's like even her family, like her sister, like she's hilarious. Like
Merritt Weaver,
she's hilarious. Oh my god, she's in like New Girl. She was in that mini series Unbelievable, which I'm sure is like a much more serious role of hers. But like, she's like the whole like serving him moment is just so funny. I'm like, this is so funny. Like the mom is hilarious. Like even like his lawyer like is like everyone just like eats up their moments like on camera. Like no one like really like gives a bad performance in this film. So
that's what I was talking about earlier too. Like with like Bill Murray, it was such a meaty role in Lost in Translation. Here you have Adam Driver, who's such like a meaty role here. That I do agree. Scarlett Johansson does feel more of the second, behind Adam Driver in terms of just like the attention and the narrative. They do still do a good job of at least telling her side and making you still agree with her and see her side. But it is mostly Adam's movie for me because Adam is just so good, and Adam Driver is one of those actors too that I felt was underappreciated for a long time, and he's just exceptional. I mean, like his moments are so good. Again, like this movie didn't make me root for him over her because I do think he made some mistakes as well, and she did some great things as well. But I do think his performance definitely outshines hers a little bit, especially in that moment where they are fighting, like that big fight, the climactic fight, like the moment that's memed to death is his moment because he's the one who like snaps and then he cries. Like he does get a little bit of the meteor stuff as an actor to work with more, but I do think the characters still were pretty balanced. But I agree, the ensemble's so strong that sometimes it detracts. Whereas JoJo, it's like everyone is kind of on an even playing field. It's like everyone shines individually, whereas here it's like Adam really shines and then everyone else shines around him, and like Scarlett's also there.
The scene where the evaluator comes to his house to evaluate, like even that actress, like she steals like that so moment, good. Like
she's so monotone-ish and so meek and
so good, and she's just so good at doing that because she is the same actor from the Washington Monument scene in Spider-Man Homecoming, who is like very blandly telling them about the Washington Monument. She's like, the Washington Monument was made in 17 something, and it's made out of all these bricks. Like that's literally how she delivers every single line.
I'm wondering if Noah watched that movie and was like,
I need that one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
like,
that's such a good moment.
Everyone remain calm. We are very safe in here. Like,
yeah, and in this movie, it's so funny because she's like, "Are you okay?" When he's just like bleeding to death.
He's like bleeding to death.
Yeah, and then he goes to reach for her purse, and she's like, "Please get away from me."
Thank you,
thank you, and then thanks for the water. Like it's water. She's like,
I finished my water. Like,
right.
It's just so good. Like it's just filled with like all these like great moments, and like it's a shame that like I feel like what you walked away like Scarlett Johansson performance wise, like I feel like her big moment was like, her monologue in the when she first like meets Laura Dern's character, and she just like has this like huge monologue about like what what she thought her life would be and like everything that she wanted, and like why their marriage kind of fell apart. I forget what she even says, but she was like, she finishes it with like, and I'm pretty sure he screwed the stage manager. And she's like, that douchebag, or like whatever Laura Dern says. But
probably something a little bit more profane, but yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. We got to talk also, the music is beautiful. It's Randy Newman who did the music for Toy Story, and you kind of get that Pixar like feel from the music,
especially the beginning when they're both like doing their like monologues. They're like, what I like about Nicole and what I like about Charlie is
right. Yeah,
it feels very like Pixar-y.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a much darker story than anything Pixar's done, even though I'd argue Pixar's done some dark shit, but like
Soul, have you seen
Out,
Soul?
Toy Story 3 where they're about to be incinerated. Yeah, okay, case in point, I retract my statement, but it's a very good score as well, and I think Randy Newman's underappreciated as well. What were you gonna say, Kel?
Pixar would like put the story in like the kids' perspective and have it be like a movie about like the kids, like two parents like splitting up. Like that's how Pixar would do it. And it would be animated, obviously.
Right. Well, that was almost why I was a little underwhelmed by the kid himself, is because I wanted more of like his perspective on things, because he feels very much just like kind of like there with the action, but it's more about the parents. And I get it, like it's more about the parents, but I wanted the kid to have a little bit more something, maybe give him a monologue somewhere, but I don't know.
I just feel like maybe they wanted the kid to be purposefully like too young to like comprehend what was going on,
right?
Just because they wanted to make it more about like the behind the scenes of like
True.
what really goes
That's a
on
good
behind
point.
a divorce rather than like, I don't know, more of that. Like I feel like maybe if they aged the son up a little bit, then maybe there would be a scene about him being like, yeah, well, this is the great things about my mom.
True.
And this is great things about my dad, you know, like,
yeah, and it's also great to
is.
see that like Adam Driver especially makes it like you see that he does care about his kid first and foremost. Like the moments where he is bleeding on the ground and his kid asks if he's okay, he turns around so he can't see the blood. He rolls over so his kid can't see the blood. He's like, "Yeah, we're fine. Did she like us? Yeah, she liked us." Like it's those subtle details where like just rolling over to the other side just because you didn't want your kid to see you bleeding. Like that's pretty profound and touching. It's very moving, and it's stuff you don't really pick up the first time you watch it because we both now watch it more than once. So like it's interesting to pick up on like those little details of the subtle things he does that shows he cares about his kid without explicitly going out of his way. So I have a theory. And this is something that some other people have shared with me as well. Like they've shared some similarities. What is your opinion on the actual knife scene itself? Like,
when he accidentally cuts himself.
Did you like think anything about it?
I didn't think. I mean, I didn't think he did it on purpose. If that's where you're going with this.
So here's my theory. So as soon as after that scene happens, we get the next scenes. We find out that they've come to an agreement, everything's settled, and then we get into the end of the film, and then it ends with him in the ghost costume at Halloween, kind of carrying his son away, and everything seems kind of okay. Like it seems like everyone's at a better spot. Like he's gonna move to California. He's now gonna be with his kid. The whole movie is about like boom, 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 and then after this knife scene is when things are finally like, all right, let's agree to share custody. Let's agree to make it work for our kid. So I've watched a few theories and I've watched the movie again. My theory is that when he bleeds, he dies on the kitchen floor. And the rest of the movie, the reason the divorce stuff the reason it's settled so quickly and all of it's kind of, handled right after that is because he dies. And the reason it's called Marriage Story is because technically the only ways, unless you get a divorce, if you die, technically you're still married. It's not like you're divorcing. So they technically never divorced because he died. They're always married. It's just that now he's dead. So that is why it's Marriage Story, not Divorce Story, because it doesn't end in a divorce. They don't end up finalizing it. Instead, he ends up dying.
He dies.
And that's why he's dressed as a ghost in Halloween at the end. That is my theory. It is a very far-fetched one.
Oh my God.
He also sings the song Being Alive. So it's like almost like when I heard that theory,
that's crazy.
The ghost, I haven't heard the ghost thing, and I haven't heard like the whole like why it's called Marriage Story thing. That was all me, but I did hear the whole thing of like what if he died, and that's why everything was like settled right after that. And I thought, I was like, well, it would make sense. I mean, it's never going to be explicitly said whether that was the intention or not, but I think that's a cool way to look at it. Like that he did die because he is, at the end of the day, his carelessness led him to like literally cut himself open in front of this moderator lady. And after that, that's why he's then able to live now by his son, because he's literally, his ghost is there. And yeah. It's a deep theory, but
that's interesting, Dill.
Yeah, it puts the movie in a different perspective, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it just everything does kind of like resolve itself very quickly afterwards. So I was like, and I saw people shared the same sentiment. So I don't know. I mean, this is a very far-fetched theory. I'm not saying that's it, but it's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I will have to say though, through my second rewatch, the part that I have to skip, those parts of movies where you have to skip, where you just feel like secondhand embarrassment. It's the Halloween scene.
The Invisible Man scene?
Yes. Yeah. Not the invisible, not the whole beginning, because I do like how dedicated he is to being a character for his son, but then them just he's desperately trying to have this Halloween with his son, and he's too tired, they can't find anywhere to trick or treat. It's just one of those moments where I'm like, this makes me too uncomfortable. I have to skip to the next part. So I did skip over that scene.
I just thought of something, because when does he reads the letter after that, right? That she wrote him, the letter that she never shared to him.
Yeah.
What if that's what she ends up reading at his eulogy, like at his funeral,
Oh my
and that's like
God,
the
you're killing the
symbolism of
spirit.
it. I'm just thinking. Anyway, no, it's a beautiful film though. It really is, and
It
I think
is. It really is.
they do handle the subject matter really well. Like I think, like you said, there is peppered in comedy, and there's some
Mhm.
moments where you can kind of breathe a little. It's not all heavy, but it is heavy because it has to be heavy, but not overly heavy. So I really appreciate that.
I'm gonna like totally take that monologue where she's like, "Hi, I'm not good at lying. You've been served."
Yes.
Because it's just so funny.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
um,
it's a great script, and I think it's something that like we could use for monologues even. Like he has a bunch of stuff too, Adam Driver. Like I'd love to
yeah,
take some
yeah,
of
for
it
sure. They both
when
have
I'm a
like
little older.
great stuff.
Yeah,
Laura Dern has a great monologue where she's like, "You have to be the perfect mother because you are just going to be held at a different standard, like in front of a jury. Like they're not going to want you to be an alcoholic who calls her son an asshole. Like you
right,
have to like our, the person like the first mother ever was Mother Mary. Like she was a virgin. God's in heaven. He's not even there. Like it's this unrealistic
right,
standard that we have to meet, and it's too good.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, a very good film. I'm a big fan. What did you give it on your scale?
my ScarJo scale, I gave it a 6 out of 10.
Okay. And that's just like because of like you're thinking of Marvel fans then coming over to this film.
Like
Like it's not a
I
6 out of 10 of a
like if
movie.
someone was like, "Oh my God, Scarlett Johansson's so good as Black Widow. What other stuff has she been in?"
Okay.
I wouldn't throw Marriage. I'd probably throw out Marriage Story after I named about 4 other
Like
films.
JoJo and other movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your favorite then of these three that we've talked about? Is it
For
JoJo?
sure, Jojo Rabbit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, mine is probably Marriage Story only because it just really, really hit me. Like I went to see the movie alone. I actually saw it at a theater, even though it went to Netflix. I saw it at a theater at a
Oh, they
screening.
put it in theaters?
Well, they did because they had to qualify back then before the pandemic. You had to be in theaters for at least 2 weeks, I think, or a week in order to qualify for Oscars. So like
Oh, okay.
movies like The Irishman and Marriage Story were in theaters, and I remember seeing it and just sitting there and just being like just overcome with emotions. Like there's something about it.
Yeah.
No distractions, just being able to focus on it and like those moments that are awkward, like really, really impacting.
Mhm.
And then I would probably put JoJo and then Lost in Translation only because it's still fresh and like I agree with you. Some of the dated humor in Lost in Translation just doesn't work as much. But yeah, I mean these are to me these are three really good films. I know you weren't hot on one of them, but her work is very good. She's a very good actress, and I think she deserves to be
Mhm.
seen beyond just the MCU because I do think
Yeah,
even
for
in the
sure.
MCU she's been underutilized a lot. So
No, yeah, I agree.
yeah. So what would be your ranking? Would it be the same, or
It
just
would
with JoJo and
be
Marriage Story flip?
JoJo, Marriage Story, Lost in Translation.
There you go. So we can't come up with a consensus because ours number 1 and 2s are tied, but it's okay. But ScarJo gets a 10 out of 10 from us as just a person and performer for sure.
Mhm.
So Kels, do you want to tease what we're doing next week? Because we're going to be doing another one of these because it's been fun to kind of look at these actors' other works. And we figured one of the first Avengers movie clubs. Why don't we go with one of the first Avengers? So Kels, who are we covering next week?
So next week we are doing Chris Evans.
Yes, we will be
And
doing Chris Evans.
the 3 movies we picked for him, we went with the debut. I think we should just always do like a debut for
a
all
debut.
the
Well, the
actors.
thing is,
Or like one of the first.
Right, because Scarlett, she made a debut in a different film, but like Lost in
Yeah.
Translation was her first big break, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're doing Not Another Teen Movie.
Not
from
another teen
2001.
movie.
Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer, because Dylan is dying for me to watch that film
Yeah.
for some reason.
It's Bong Joon-ho. He directed Parasite. He's a multi-Oscar winner. He directed this movie too. It's really good.
Nice. And then his biggest film of late, Knives Out.
That's right. Who he has a very prominent role in, but we won't spoil it. And it'll be nice because I don't know about much of the other crossover, but there is a Marvel personality in Snowpiercer. The Ancient One herself, Tilda Swinton, is in that film. And then I believe one of the actors from Snowpiercer is also going to be in Eternals, but I have to double check. Maybe not. Actually, no, I'm thinking of Train to Busan. There's 2 movies that take place on a train. And some of the language is spoken in Asian, so I'm thinking of another guy from Train to Busan who will be in Eternals, never mind. Knives Out. There's got to be someone else who's in a Marvel movie in Knives Out, right? I mean...
I'm trying to think of the cast right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm going to look real
quick. One
of
the It kids is in it. Hannah Baker from 13 Reasons Why. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Don Johnson, Ana de Armas, Catherine Langford. Maybe not. Lakeith Stanfield. No, I don't think he's done anything. Toni Collette, Christopher Plummer. Okay, maybe not. So yeah, Chris Evans, Daniel Craig.
The name of the evaluator actor woman from Marriage Story. Her name is Martha Kelly. Who is also in Homecoming. In case you were curious.
Big fan of Martha Kelly.
I hope
she's in Spider-Man 3 somehow. I hope she's the one who explains the multiverse to us because she would be so good.
The multiverse started as a sacred timeline, and there was a multiversal war.
Here's Tobey Maguire. All right.
So, Kelsey, you have to take it there.
Yeah, so next week, Chris Evans, Not Another Teen Movie, Snowpiercer, Knives Out. Kelsey, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can find me on TikTok at Cause13. And you can find me on YouTube. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Cause Productions. I promise I'm going to start posting on it.
Everyone also make sure to give Kelsey a big birthday shout out. She's going abroad soon. By the next episode, she will be abroad. So give her your birthday comments now. Send her all your love for her birthday. 23, right?
23.
I don't even know how old I am, and I know you're younger than me, so I figured I was like 20. I'm 23, so I think this is gonna be your 23rd.
It is.
But I had to think for a second. I was like, am I 23? Am I 24? What am I?
We are due. We're getting up there.
My back's hurting. Oh, man. You can find me at Dylan_Randazzo at Twitter. You can find me at Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok, which I've actually posted now for the first time in a while. I posted a singing video. Go check it out. Don't judge too hard. And then the Dill Pickle Movie Network here on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast, thank you. Give us a 5-star review or a 4-star. No, probably a 5-star. I'm not even going to encourage you to give us a 4-star. If you're a fan of any of these movies, sound off on your opinions of these movies in the comments below. Does Lost in Translation work for you, or are you just as lost as Kelsey is? Is Jojo Rabbit as much of a humor fun fair as it is to us, or do you think it's annoying because it's about Hitler? And then Marriage Story, whose side are you on, Scarlett's or Adams? Don't answer that because there's no right answer. I'm just giving them prompts to comment with. But please comment, subscribe, help us out. It would be a very big honor if you subscribe to us. And if not, keep watching us then. If you're not willing to subscribe, just keep watching because we have good stuff coming up for you. See you next time.